Wow. It's wonderful having the band here. Wonderful. Adds another dimension. So I want to say welcome to everyone who might be on the live stream today. Wherever you are a part of our spiritual community, and we are blessed to have you here. Today is the second in the Love series for this month of February, taking into consideration health, wealth, relationships, and creative expression. And today is, love of wealth. And wonder what that means. I wonder what that means. As I sat down to think about this yesterday, I'm currently working with Maria Nemeth on her Unleashing the Energy of Money series that she does by webinar on Monday nights. And for 6 months, I have registered for this class. And one of the requirements is reading this book called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. Anybody ever heard of that book? Yes? It was written in 1910. Interesting. It was written before anything that Ernest Holmes had actually written. And it contains such juicy tidbits of information about using the science of mind to shift our perception about money and wealth. I have agreed to read chapters 4, 7, 11, and 14 every day for the next 90 days. That's part of this program that we're in. And each day I read them, it seems like Wallace Wattles rewrote the book from one week to the next. It happens a lot that way. Goethe said, a great person apologizes for the mistakes of the past. A great person apologizes for the mistakes of the past. A great person corrects them. What I am discovering in reading Wallace Wattles' book is that we try to apologize for the mistaken thoughts that we've had around many things in our past. But we forget to include money and wealth as a part of the equation. We often try to correct those mistakes by maybe taking a prosperity class or reading the latest book on money. One of my favorite books was The Trick to Money is Having Some by Stuart Wilde. Because it's silly. It's absolutely a silly book because there is no trick to having money. You know, there is no trick to it. What clearly needs to happen is that our belief system around money has to have a shift in consciousness. That's what the reality is, because consciousness is all there is. Alice in Wonderland said, you know what the issue is with the world. Everyone wants a magical solution to their problems, and everyone refuses to believe in magic. So, the science of mind, though, is not magic, but it is magical in its proportion of the demonstration that we can experience when we begin to understand that thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. Thought is the only power. Joyce alluded to that in her creative thought this morning. Wallace Wattles is really careful in this book not to use spirit or God in his writing. He used words like formless substance or original substance to sort of euphemize God. He says, or this one, you might recognize the person below who I'm quoting her off the minister's listserv yesterday. There was quite a kerfuffle about a letter one of the ministers had written where she was a little snarky about things. And so it precipitated a whole bunch more snark by other people. And so Sue, in her infinite wisdom, brings everything back to where it's supposed to be. And she said there are no programs or ministerial gimmicks for success that will ever take the place of the passion, spiritual knowledge, confidence, and spiritual authority we each finally are called upon to take responsibility for, continuing to up-level our own consciousness. It's all up to us. It's all up to us as individuals. We have to up-level our own consciousness. My reason for being in this teaching is to up-level my consciousness to the place where every thought held in form causes the creation of that form. That's my ideal, that everything that I desire to experience in life has its result in form. Yesterday, my sister Jen told me a wonderful story that illustrates this idea. She and her guy Dennis decided a few months ago to create a treasure map or a vision map. It's kind of a vision board. It's kind of the same thing. They didn't quite finish it, and about a month and a half ago, they set it aside. Christmas came around, and they were a little bit too busy to work on it, so they set it aside for some future moment. And recently, they found a house on Whidbey Island off the coast of Seattle that had 11 acres of property. They went to see it, and they promptly leased it. Now, you'd think this seems pretty normal, everyday kind of occurrence, right? But wait, there's more to the story. The house had only been listed on Craigslist for 25 minutes when they saw it. No one else had called about the house, even to the point of them getting approved, their credit approved and everything for the lease of the house. And the lease price on the house was $1,400 a month. In Los Angeles, for 11 acres of property, you get where I'm going with this. But the final lease that they actually signed only had the rent as $1,225 because the owner loved them so much. And now, this is where we could use a drum roll, but okay, never mind. When my sister was packing up the stuff yesterday for the move, the potential move, she found the treasure map. And the picture of the house that they had put on the treasure map was exactly the house that they ended up leasing. Now, okay, we plant a seed in the subconscious, and the subconscious mind just takes it in, stores it, waits for the optimum moment to demonstrate that particular idea, right? That seed thought. The thought of the house of a certain construction, Waddell says, if it were impressed upon formless substance, might not cause the instant formation of the house, but it would cause the turning of creative energies already working in trade and commerce to such channels as to result in the speedy building of the house. What a defined concept, the turning of creative energies. Can we believe in this idea that the moment we have a dream or a goal that wants to see itself in our experience, that there is a turning of creative energies that's working behind the scenes? When we desire to experience something in mind, the universe rises in support of that something materializing in our lives. That's a given. Let me put that in perspective as to what it has to do with money. The thought of money of a certain proportion, if it were impressed upon formless substance, might not cause the instant formation of money, but it would cause the turning of creative energies into such channels as to result in the speedy demonstration of money. It works with anything. It absolutely works with anything. First of all, there's a certain level of responsibility to this idea, or of being wealthy, or having discretionary money. I must have respect for money. I must see that money is God in action. And I must know that prosperity or wealth is my divine right. All things being equal, if I have check, check, check on those three things, if these three components are not in place, chances are that my demonstration of money will merely be a Band-Aid on a broken arm. It won't be a permanent demonstration. What does your money look like in your wallet? Is it thrown in there willy-nilly, or is it in order from ones to hundreds? Do you even have hundreds in your wallet? You know, that's a good question. I keep one, and it's my emergency $100 bill. You know, probably I've had it for 10 years, never had to use it. I don't create emergencies in my life. Can you account for every penny that you spend each week? Or are you leaking money right, left, and center? And once again, do you have a glass ceiling of receptivity when it comes to money? That's what Joyce said this morning. She almost wrote the talk. Waddle says these three things are the components to a changed life experience, whether it's money or any other thing in our life. There is a thinking stuff, God, from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. We can form things in our thought, and by impressing our thought upon formless substance can cause the thing we think about to be created. Those are the rules. Those are the rules. This is scary and wonderful all at the same time, don't you think? I mean, just really, when you think about it, what it is, what am I thinking? What kind of thoughts am I thinking? Joyce alluded to gossip and negative thinking. Well, if that is the natural tendency of thought for us, why are we even wondering why we get negativity and gossiping people around us? It's a natural byproduct of these rules and regulations. We have been told that in order to be wealthy or to experience the riches of the universe, that we have to do things in a certain way. First, though, in order to experience wealth, I must learn to think in a certain way. That's the ideal. I have to think in a certain way. Our way of doing things is the direct result of the way we think about things. So if my thinking about money is skewed, my experience of money will also be skewed. To do things the way we want to do them, we will have to acquire the ability to think the way we want to think. And this is the first step, according to Waddles, in getting rich. To think about what we want to think is to think truth, with a capital T, regardless of experiences and regardless of appearances. This is where supreme effort comes in. This is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where daily practice has to matter more than anything else. Every one of us has the natural and inherent ability to think what we want to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. Suggested by appearances. You know, in the Course in Miracles, it says all appearance is illusion. All appearance is illusion. When we experience things at a five-sensory level, it has to be filtered through our perception. It has to be filtered through some previous idea that we might have about how something is supposed to be. But when we see it from truth, all we get to know is that God is all there is. To think according to appearances is easy. To think truth, regardless of appearance, Wallace says, is challenging and laborious and requires the expenditure of more power than any work we're ever called upon to do. This is definitely where we get hung up on our road to health, to wealth, to right relationships and perfect employment. We're required to sustain consecutive thoughts of health and wealth, etc., and this may be the hardest thing we ever have to do. And it is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. It's really sometimes challenging, isn't it, to look at some real tragedy in the world and still know that there's a truth about that at some deep intrinsic level. When we see the bills coming in and the money going out, and when we see the demise of a marriage, or we see or hear the diagnosis of an illness for someone, or when we get that dreaded pink slip on a Friday, it's very difficult to see beyond appearances. Years ago, I lived in San Francisco, and when I needed a few extra dollars, Saturday morning, I would get in my car, go to my favorite quarter slot machine at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe, and come home with $300 to make it through the end of the month. Now, you're going to think this is funny. The first time it happened, it was a complete surprise to me. Complete surprise. The second time, it was more or less planned. I wasn't knowingly a practicing religious scientist in those days, but I had a certain faith in my ability to generate income from that favorite slot machine, and by God, that's what I did without fail. It's funny because sometimes I'd go there. I'd get there maybe at 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and someone would be at my machine. And I would not go to any other machine because I needed to go to that specific slot machine. I had none of the filters that would prevent me from demonstrating the money I needed. There were no sensors to say this is impossible or this won't happen. Mind you, I played my cards really close to my chest. I didn't tell anyone I was doing this because I thought it would jinx my system. Jinx my system. I had an expectation and it was fulfilled. Do I have the same level of expectation in all areas of my life? Yes and no. We don't always have that same expectation. I kid you not. This went on for me for many, many, many weeks. Many months, actually, when I'd go to Lake Tahoe. And it was just what I expected to have happen. And it happened according to my expectation. Every thought held in this substance becomes a form. And we can so impress our thoughts upon it as to cause them to take form and become visible things. My $300 were visible things. Once I had the $300, I wasn't greedy. I went home with my $300. I never stayed longer to win more because the $300 was my magical number. We've all come to this plane of existence to practice mastery over something, haven't we? Something. When we're lacking in certain areas of our lives, it only means that we've allowed doubt and fear and uncertainty to creep into our thoughts. Our work to have that love of wealth, or whatever it is for you, is to remain steadfast in our ability to know the truth in spite of appearance. We must set aside all other concepts of the universe, and we must dwell upon the good until it is fixed in mind and that it has become our habitual thought. There is significant trust involved here. And don't ask why these things are true, nor speculate as to how they can be true. Simply take it on trust. This teaching is trust-based, totally trust-based, having to do with our faith, and our faith plays a big part in our seeing our dreams realized. And when we begin to relate to this idea of wealth in harmonious and life-affirming ways, wealth comes to us in ways known and unknown. That is absolutely the way it works. When we begin to prime the pump by being in gratitude for what we currently have, as Joyce shared this morning in her creative thought, knowing that this is where our good is, we know that more can be generated, more can be experienced, more can be realized. I know this for everyone in this spiritual community, for our center. As I prosper, the community prospers, and the world prospers, knowing, as always, with God, all things are possible. Will you join me? Thank you. We always know Paulette's here when the clapping starts after the talk. So will you join me in consciousness this morning, please? Thank you. Yes, thank you, thank you. All right, please go within for just a moment here and realize the power and presence of Spirit is right here, right now, sitting next to each and every one of us, and is a part of who and what we are. So we're surrounded today by this God essence. We're surrounded by the God essence of how we are being communicated with through this music this morning, through the message from Reverend Joyce, through the message that I have just given, and through everyone who is here today in service. This is wealth beyond imagination. The conversation of good friends, the sense of community that we feel, and the way in which we support this spiritual community called the Center for Spiritual Living Westlake Village is in fact a love of wealth. It is the wealth of this beautiful, beautiful sanctuary and every person in it. This center is the people. And we are blessed by the presence of one another. We are blessed in such beautiful ways today because we have agreed to dress up and show up. We have agreed to be here in consciousness today. We have agreed to support this community physically, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. There is a lot of love in this room today. This love is predicated first and foremost on this idea that there is a generosity of spirit that moves in and through each one of us. And we are here to make that known to every other person here. And so today, it is from this place of joy and gratitude that I know that this center is viable in this community called Westlake, that we have something wonderful to share with everyone here, and that as we begin to realize our value, we begin to see how we are changing lives one person at a time, that there is possibility right here and right now, and that possibility is seen by means of each one of us. And so it is that I'm grateful. As I release my word, I know it is done and complete in the mind of God, as we say together, and so it is.